Hey, maybe I can start with you. Your talk on the last Evolved Oncology forum that we did has been seen thousands of times now on the YouTube channel. You talked about cancer being a myth, which was really about really understanding, the patient's story and your story. And I just wanted to go for you to go a little bit further into that, what your thoughts have been over the last couple of years.
Thanks, James. Yeah, so the last time I was on 2 years ago, we did a cancer forum, and cancer is a myth, was a sort of a deceiving title. I mean, it was really about the mythology and the story of the hero's journey of people who have cancer and the patient. But I would say what's happened in the last few years and what we've learned building this community is building community is all about sharing gifts and stories. Charles Eisenstein said that earlier this year at some of our events. And sharing our story is so powerful, and we need more of that. So I was happy to share some of my own personal journeys last time, but what I appreciate about what Nalini just gave you is a success story. We need more success stories out in the open, being shared on the internet, successful cancer recovery, successful practitioners who are running successful practices. We need a bigger community, and you build a bigger community by sharing stories. And one of the things we teach the doctors, and we had some amazing doctors with us this weekend working very closely, is you can promote yourself by sharing the success stories of your patients. And this is what more people need to see. It's not on the news. Like Nalini just told you an amazing story about someone who recovered cancer working with her. People don't know that exists. People do not know that exists. And how important is it that people start to find out? And if you're waiting for these stories to just show up on their own, they're not going to. And the good news is it's a great way for something to go, to be shared and what we say viral, right, in the online world, but to let your stories, your success stories with your patients get out into the world, because people need that. People need to feel empowered. They need to know this is possible. The only stories they hear about are sad stories or stories about one way of approaching this. And by the way, there's a ton of them, because a lot of people are sick. I mean, every person in this room has either been sick or is close with someone who's sick. And that's just a fact. And that's every room around the country right now and around the world. So, let's get out there. Let's find ways to share our stories. It's also going to bring more, as a practitioner, as you share that, you're going to get more attention, more patients, and our community is going to grow differently. So I would say, just building off what happened last time, sharing our personal story is where it starts, and then let's start to share the other successes that we can and make it as accessible as possible.
Thank you, Andrea. I know that your story has sort of driven your practice and your school and everything that you're doing now. How do you see particularly like oncology filling this gap between the few doctors that get it, a lot more integrated providers that would like to be efficient? How do you see that all coming together?
What I see is that patients are seeking more help. They're desperate for it. So they are coming to the practitioners that can help hold their hand through the process. So even if a doctor does know how to talk about going gluten-free or doing detoxification, patients are still wanting their hand held. They don't understand what it means for them. They don't understand how to do it with their lifestyle, with their economic means, in their sociological environment, say their age and everybody else is going out. There's a lot of hand holding that's needed, and we're seeing this more and more. Patients just raising their hands saying, help me, my doctor, my 3 doctors, my 5 doctors are telling me to do all these things. I don't know what's the priority. I don't know what order to do it in, and I need help taking it home. So that's where I see we really fill the gap with that allied functional medicine practitioner, that functional nutritionist that can do that bridging piece that's so necessary these days.
Absolutely. Dwight, I just wanted to ask you, we were at the PLMI conference and you saw, Cancer Treatment Centers of America, has fully endorsed it. Dwight's got a mic there. Has fully endorsed this approach, completely integrated care. You've got now these other cancer hospitals showing up and sort of showing an interest in this. Over the span of your career as an oncologist, have you seen attitude shifting towards integrative care amongst oncologists?
Well, let me say that Before I became an oncologist, I was a holistic doctor, and I kind of grew up with functional medicine. The things I was doing in my practice then, in the late 70s, would have been called cancer quackery, and now it's called integrative oncology. So I'd say there's progress.
That's a good way to share it. Nalini, what you're obviously keenly involved in scaling up this kind of care. What are some of the blockages that stand in the way from a truly integrative oncology system?
Well, a lot depends on the oncologist because the patient is frightened and they still think the oncologist has the solution. And so I never ever want a patient to be in a contentious relationship between me and their doctor. So in some cases, that first phase where chemotherapy may be administered and the doctor's worried about interactions, I'll just do a aggressive nutritional program, and a shake is part of my core treatment plan, and then I sneak things into the shake. So if the radiologist says no antioxidants, so they don't know the greens powders and the reds powders and the schizandra and the goji berry are antioxidants. We just don't tell them that. And you can put vitamin D in there, you can put Chinese mushrooms in there, but these are also things that typically don't disrupt any of the therapeutic treatments. The other thing that I do is if a patient is on, say, a 21-day cycle of chemotherapy, the drugs are typically active, most drugs, for 3, 4, maybe 5 days. And if they're on a 21-day cycle, then on day 5, you could start the nutraceuticals and botanicals at that time. And so a lot of oncologists, that's okay with them. So there's ways to do it. But our job is to teach the oncologist. If you have a very, very controlling, closed oncologist, then the patient might wait till they're done with their treatment, and then we jump in then. And then we have free reign because we're not worried about drug interactions. So there are steps, but really it's about relationship building. I've been practicing in Los Angeles for 30 years. Every oncologist has seen my treatment plan and my list of tests, and most of them are willing to humor me, and if not, roll their eyes, maybe even order all the tests. Maybe even write a prescription for something that I want the patient to take. So I think a lot of it's about relationship building.
Andrea, I want to just ask you about that because I know that you, as a nutritionist, have been able to get consistent referrals from physicians in Portland through exactly what Nalini's talking about. How do you do this? How can people out there build those bridges?
Well, it really is not just in Portland, but it's all over the country that we're getting referrals into our clinic. And what I'm teaching the practitioners that I train is it's just what Nalini said. It's about relationship building, and it's about speaking a common language. So we can't just think of it from a coaching perspective. We actually have to speak the language of the doctors that we're talking to, and in that way understand their prestige, understand our role on the relationship, and work in partnership together. And, I haven't had a problem doing that, and it's something that I'm definitely constantly training our student community to do, sometimes giving them the done-for-you language to write to a doctor or to reach out and understand their role there, because it's not easy. The adjunct or allied practitioner is sometimes nervous to reach out. We're kind of ballsy. We do it. We don't mind, we don't mind reaching out, but it's something that sometimes takes some training with other practitioners.
And I'll also say a lot of my referrals come from oncologists, and a lot of my referrals come from functional medicine doctors. Some of my colleagues who are the top, most brilliant functional medicine doctors go, I don't know what to do with these patients. Go, please, Nalini, take care of them. But we should have enough people in our own community that there's more referrals in more parts of the country, because I have colleagues referring to me from New York City. There should be somebody there that could do this, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's really the goal, is to scale this up, not only all over the country, but all over the world. I mean, cancer is not specifically an American issue by any means. And, the epidemic that you talked about is certainly moving forward. Dwight, I'd love to just sort of have a word here, like that there's probably going to be, if not now, but in the long tail of this episode, there's going to be oncologists who are going to watch this. And I just maybe love for you to just, take a moment to maybe speak with them directly just about, what it takes for them to open up to the potential of having this kind of relationship.
Well, I would just encourage oncologists to pay attention to what their patients are doing outside of the oncology treatment plan, and be aware that there are practitioners like Nalini all over the country who don't know a lot about the drugs that they're using, but they know a great deal about herbs and nutrients and lifestyle, and they can really enhance the whole process dramatically. Another thing that I when I lecture to practitioners is I encourage them to know whether the treatment is being given with curative intent or with palliative intent. When treatment's being given with curative intent, we need to be more careful. Like Nalini said, that that's when I kind of go to a loaded smoothie, because if we're giving them lots and lots of capsules and tinctures and teas and so forth, and they're one of the 5% of stage 2 Hodgkin's patients that relapse, or one of the adjuvant breast cancer therapy patients who relapses, they're going to blame that complementary intervention. They're not just going to, it's a target. It's an easy target. So I encourage people to be conservative and really work with diet and lifestyle, with kind of a functional smoothie being the a center point in that. But if it's being given with palliative intent, then we can kind of take the gloves off. And the oncologists are less worried about that you're going to interfere with the therapy, because all they're doing is trying to control the tumor to reduce the symptoms for the patient as long as they can. So that's the patient Nalini presented was a palliative care patient because she had unresectable metastases of a uterine sarcoma, and Nalini converted her from a palliative care to a healthy person, and that's never going to happen when the oncologic treatment is the only thing that's going on.
Absolutely, yeah, that's such a key point. Well, look, I just really want to thank all of you for being part of this Evolution of Oncology panel and forum. As I said at the beginning, like our goal here at the Evolution of Medicine is to be able to create bridges to these these specialty communities. I think there's been a focus on there's an obvious fit for functional medicine in the family medicine primary care world to try and go upstream and reduce the number of people going to these specialists. But we're starting to see psychiatrists with health coaches, Cancer Treatment Centers of America with naturopathic doctors. Like the integration is happening, and appreciate all of your work individually to to facilitate and accelerate that work. So let's have a round of applause here for the panel. Yeah.
I just want to circle back and re-emphasize what it means to build community within your practice. I mean, on some level, we've seen everything work and everything not work, and that's conventional, holistic. I mean, just being alive in this amount of time that I have, not to mention the veterans that are here, it's worked and it's not worked. And what we do know is the more community and the more connecting that patients do, the better it is for them. And the more stories we get out there, the more options that they have. And when someone feels good about the option that they're taking, it's incredibly powerful for their healing journey. So the more things they hear about, the more things they've heard work for other people, the more that they're going to get a chance to feel what feels right for them. So we have to prioritize this as a community and take the leadership in that. And, you know, whatever you're doing clinically, I mean, you do what you're doing clinically, but do not don't underestimate the power of starting to build community. I mean, we see with the conventional model, people going with chronic illness that get together in these groups. And I don't know how many of those groups exist in the functional model or in the integrative model, but it should be consistent with that. We should be the ones leading the charge in that. I have family members and people who have dealt with MS and other things, and it's one of the most powerful parts of their life are these groups that they join, and it's also what exposes to them to what works and what doesn't. And when I speak to people who have these chronic illnesses and they go and spend time with these communities, if that community hasn't been exposed to other types of stories and options, it teaches them that there aren't any. And when I bring something up to them and I say, hey, you could explore this, you could explore that, they go back to that group, and if that group doesn't feel that that's real or hasn't heard that from their doctor, then they're closed off to it. And if we all of a sudden at our practices are building groups of people who are exploring this way of doing things and getting more stories shared and more community built, you're going to get there's just so many more options for them because they want support. They want to connect with each other. They want the peer support. And so I just feel like we take it upon ourselves to do a better job of doing that as a community at the Evolution of Medicine. And I think it really will affect every approach to every illness that we have. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, well said. And I think that it's